Long ago, in a land deep within Africa, there was a kingdom called Anzaya. It was a vast land, full of green forests, tall mountains, and flowing rivers. The people lived in peace, led by a wise king, and all seemed perfect. But what most people did not know was that Anzaya once had a queen, a fierce ruler whose name had been erased from history. Her name was Queen Zola, and she had once been the most powerful leader the land had ever known. Her story had been buried in time, but the people whispered of her strength, her bravery, and the mysterious way she disappeared. One stormy night, in the heart of Anzaya's royal palace, strange things began to happen. Thunder roared in the sky, and lightning lit up the palace towers. Young Tunde, a boy of 12, worked in the palace as a messenger. He was delivering a message to the king's advisors when, all of a sudden, he felt a strong wind swirl around him. The torches lining the hallway flickered, and the air grew cold. Something, or someone, was watching him. As Tunde walked deeper into the palace, he heard a faint voice calling his name. Tunde. Tunde. He froze in his tracks, his heart pounding. Who could be calling him? He was alone in the hallway. The voice was soft, like a whisper carried on the wind, but it sounded so familiar, as if it had been waiting for him for a very long time. Tunde. Come closer. With shaky hands, Tunde followed the voice. It seemed to be coming from a hidden door behind one of the giant statues that lined the hallway. He had never noticed this door before, but something pulled him toward it. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. Inside, Tunde found himself in a small, dusty room. The air was thick with age, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. In the center of the room stood a tall, old chest. It was covered in strange carvings that glowed faintly in the darkness. The voice had gone silent, but Tunde felt a strange energy pulling him toward the chest. His curiosity got the best of him, and he knelt down to examine it. Slowly, he opened the chest, his fingers trembling with excitement and fear. Inside, he found a golden crown, beautifully decorated with gemstones that sparkled even in the dim light. But this was no ordinary crown. As soon as Tunde touched it, a powerful surge of energy shot through his body. His mind filled with visions of battles, roaring crowds, and a fierce queen standing tall with a sword in her hand. She wore the same crown that now lay in his hands. Suddenly, the voice returned, clearer than before. Find me. Free me. I am the forgotten queen. Tunde's eyes widened. The stories of Queen Zola, the ruler who had disappeared without a trace, came rushing back to him. Could this crown belong to her? Was she the one calling him? Before he could think further, the door behind him slammed shut, and the room filled with a strange light. The walls seemed to shimmer, and Tunde could hear the faint echo of footsteps approaching. He had to get out of there, fast. Tunde bolted toward the door, pulling it open with all his strength. The palace guards were patrolling nearby, and the sound of their heavy footsteps grew louder. He clutched the crown tightly, hiding it beneath his tunic, and slipped out of the secret room just in time. His heart raced as he made his way back through the palace halls. What had he just discovered? The crown of Queen Zola, a forgotten ruler who was said to have vanished without a trace, was now in his hands. But why had she disappeared? And why was her crown hidden away like this? Tunde couldn't shake the feeling that he had uncovered something dangerous, something that had been buried for a reason. As he reached the courtyard, Tunde found a quiet corner where he could catch his breath. He pulled the crown out from beneath his tunic and stared at it. It was so beautiful, but it also felt powerful, almost alive. Suddenly, the voice returned, louder this time. Tunde, you have the crown of the true ruler of Anzaya. They tried to erase my name, but I am still here. You must find my resting place. Only then will the truth be revealed. Tunde's heart pounded. He had never asked for this. He was just a simple boy working in the palace. Why him? Why had Queen Zola chosen him? He knew he couldn't keep the crown hidden forever. Sooner or later, someone would notice it was missing, and if they found out he had it, he would be in serious trouble. But he also felt a strange responsibility. The queen's voice was calling to him for a reason, and he couldn't just ignore it. Tunde knew he had to find out more about Queen Zola. He had to uncover the truth, no matter what it cost him. The next morning, Tunde set out to learn more about Queen Zola. He knew that few people in the kingdom still spoke of her, but there was one person who might know the truth, old Baba Gori, the palace historian. Baba Gori had lived in Anzaya for many years, and he knew all the stories, even the ones that others had forgotten. Tunde found Baba Gori sitting under a large baobab tree near the palace gates. The old man was hunched over a book, his white beard brushing against the pages as he read. When Tunde approached, Baba Gori looked up, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "What brings you here, boy?" Baba Gori asked, his voice low and raspy. "I need to know about Queen Zola," Tunde replied, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "The forgotten queen." Baba Gori raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the question. "Queen Zola? Now that is a name I have not heard in many years. Why do you ask?" Tunde hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "I found something. Something that belonged to her. I need to know the truth." Baba Gori leaned back, studying Tunde carefully. After a long pause, he spoke. "Queen Zola was once the greatest ruler Anzaya had ever known. She was brave, fearless, and loved by her people. But she had many enemies, especially within the palace. Some believed that a woman should not hold the throne, and they conspired against her." "What happened to her?" Tunde asked, his heart racing. "She vanished," Baba Gori replied, his voice heavy with sadness. "One day, she simply disappeared. Some say she was betrayed by those closest to her, while others believe she was cursed. Her name was erased from the history books, and her crown was hidden away, never to be seen again." Tunde felt a chill run down his spine. The crown he had found was indeed Queen Zola's, and her disappearance had been no accident. But why had she called out to him? What did she want? Baba Gori leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "Be careful, boy. If you found something of Queen Zola's, you are in great danger. There are those who would do anything to keep her memory buried." Tunde swallowed hard. He had uncovered a secret that could change everything, but now he was caught in a dangerous web of lies and betrayal. The fate of the forgotten queen was in his hands, and he had no idea who he could trust. As Tunde walked back to the palace, his mind raced. Baba Gori's words echoed in his head, "You are in great danger." The crown felt heavy under his tunic, as if it was carrying the weight of an entire kingdom's history. Tunde needed to find Queen Zola's resting place, but how? There were no records of her tomb, no mention of where she had been laid to rest. The palace was full of secrets, and it seemed that this was one of the biggest. That night, as Tunde lay in his bed, he heard the voice again. "You are close, Tunde. The answers lie within the heart of the palace. Follow the light, and you will find me." The next morning, Tunde set off to search for the hidden tomb. The palace was vast, with many rooms and hidden corridors, but something told him that the answers he sought were closer than he thought. He decided to start with the royal gardens. They were ancient, and there were rumors that secret tunnels lay beneath the earth, tunnels that led to forgotten places. As he walked through the gardens, Tunde noticed something strange. A faint glow seemed to be coming from the base of an old, twisted tree in the corner. His heart pounded as he approached the tree, and he saw that the roots had shifted, revealing a hidden stone door beneath the earth. This was it, the entrance to Queen Zola's resting place. Taking a deep breath, Tunde pushed the door open and stepped inside. The adventure had just begun. The stone door creaked as Tunde pushed it open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase that seemed to lead deep underground. The air was cool and damp, and the faint glow from the crown pulsed softly under his tunic, as if guiding him. Tunde hesitated at the entrance, his heart racing. He wasn't sure what he would find down there, but he knew he had to follow the path. With every step he took down the stairs, the air grew heavier, and the silence around him felt eerie, almost unnatural. After what felt like forever, he reached the bottom, and the sight before him took his breath away. It was a grand, hidden chamber. The walls were covered in ancient carvings, telling the story of Queen Zola's reign. Tunde walked slowly, his fingers tracing the figures etched into the stone. He saw scenes of Zola leading her army into battle, standing before her people, and ruling with strength and wisdom. But there was something else, a final carving, showing her surrounded by shadowy figures, their hands reaching out as if to pull her into darkness. At the center of the chamber was a stone sarcophagus. It was adorned with the same symbols that were on the crown, and Tunde knew immediately that it belonged to Queen Zola. His pulse quickened as he approached it, the weight of the crown feeling heavier than ever. The Queen's voice echoed in his mind once more. "Free me, Tunde. The truth must be known." Tunde knelt beside the sarcophagus and, with trembling hands, placed the crown on top. As soon as the crown touched the stone, a bright light filled the chamber, and the air seemed to hum with power. The lid of the sarcophagus began to shift, slowly sliding open. Tunde held his breath, unsure of what to expect. Was Queen Zola truly still alive, or had he unlocked something far more dangerous? As the sarcophagus lid slid aside, the light faded, and Tunde saw her, Queen Zola. She lay inside, her body perfectly preserved as if she had just fallen asleep. Her skin was smooth, her features fierce yet beautiful, and her hands rested peacefully on her chest. The crown on her head matched the one Tunde had found. For a moment, Tunde couldn't believe his eyes. This was the fierce ruler he had heard about, the queen who had vanished without a trace. But now, she was right before him, waiting to be awakened. Suddenly, Zola's eyes flickered open. Tunde gasped and stumbled back. The queen sat up slowly, her movements graceful yet filled with power. Her gaze locked onto Tunde, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light of the chamber, and Tunde felt as if she could see straight into his soul. "Who are you?" Queen Zola's voice was calm, but there was an intensity behind it that made Tunde's heart race. I'm Tunde," he stammered, his voice shaking. "I found your crown. Your voice. It led me here." Zola's expression softened slightly. "You are the one who heard my call." She rose from the sarcophagus, standing tall and regal, her presence commanding the entire chamber. "I have been trapped here for centuries, sealed away by those who feared my power. But now, I am free." Tunde swallowed hard, trying to make sense of everything. "What happened to you, Your Majesty? Why were you locked away?" Queen Zola's face darkened. "Betrayal. My own advisors feared my strength as a ruler. They believed that Anzaya should be ruled by a king, and they plotted against me. They used dark magic to seal me away, erasing my name from history so that no one would remember my rule." Her voice was filled with anger, but there was also a deep sadness behind her words. Tunde felt a pang of sympathy for her. She had been forgotten, her legacy buried by those who were supposed to serve her. "What will you do now?" Tunde asked, unsure of what her plans would be now that she was free. Queen Zola looked down at him, her eyes burning with determination. "I will reclaim my throne, Tunde. Anzaya must know the truth, and those who betrayed me will face justice." Tunde and Queen Zola made their way back up the hidden staircase and out into the gardens. The night air was cool, and the palace loomed ahead of them, quiet and still. As they walked, Tunde couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. He was standing beside a legendary queen who had been lost to time, and now she was about to return to the very palace that had betrayed her. Zola moved with the grace of a lioness, her eyes scanning the palace as if she was already planning her next move. "We must move carefully," she said quietly. "There are still those who will try to stop me." Tunde nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "What can I do to help, Your Majesty?" "You have already done much by freeing me," Zola replied. "But now, I need you to be my eyes and ears in the palace. We cannot reveal ourselves just yet. I must understand who holds power in Anzaya now and where their loyalties lie." Tunde nodded, though the idea of sneaking around the palace filled him with nervousness. He had never been involved in anything this dangerous before, but he couldn't turn back now. He had to help Queen Zola restore her rightful place. As they neared the palace entrance, Zola placed a hand on Tunde's shoulder. "Remember, trust no one," she said firmly. "Not until we know who our true allies are." With that, they slipped into the shadows, ready to uncover the truth hidden within the palace walls. The palace was quiet as Tunde and Queen Zola made their way through the corridors, the flickering torches casting long shadows on the walls. Tunde led the way, guiding Zola to a small, hidden room where she could stay unnoticed for the time being. I'll find out who's in charge now, Tunde whispered, his voice barely audible. Wait here, Your Majesty. Zola nodded, her fierce gaze never leaving his. Be careful, Tunde. There are many who would rather see me remain forgotten. With a deep breath, Tunde left the room and made his way through the palace. He knew he had to be cautious, one wrong move, and he could end up in serious trouble. As he walked through the grand halls, he overheard whispers from the servants and guards. They say the council is meeting tonight, one guard muttered to another. The king's advisors are planning something big. Tunde's ears perked up. The council, the very group that had likely betrayed Queen Zola, was meeting. This was his chance to learn the truth. Quietly, he followed the guards down a hidden corridor that led to the council chamber. Inside, he could hear voices, angry, heated voices. The people must never know about Queen Zola, one voice hissed. If they learn the truth, everything we've built will crumble. Tunde's heart raced. He had found the very people who had conspired against Zola, and now they were planning to keep her memory buried. But Zola was no longer a memory. She was back, and soon, she would take her revenge. Tunde pressed himself against the cold stone wall, his heart pounding as he listened to the voices inside the council chamber. The weight of the secret he was carrying felt heavier with each passing moment. He had freed Queen Zola, and now he knew the people who had betrayed her were still in power. Inside, the voices grew louder. We must strengthen our control over Anzaya, a harsh voice declared. The people are beginning to ask questions. If they find out about Zola, it will be the end of us. Another voice chimed in, calmer but no less dangerous. We erased her from history for a reason. The people must believe she never existed. Tunde's mind raced. These men had hidden Zola's name and erased her story from the hearts of the people, just as Baba Gori had said. But now that Zola had returned, would they stop at nothing to keep their secret buried? Suddenly, one of the voices lowered, and Tunde had to strain to hear. The only way to ensure Zola never rises again is to destroy any trace of her. That includes her crown. Tunde's eyes widened. They were looking for the crown, the very crown hidden under his tunic. If they found out he had it, there would be no escape. He had to warn Zola. Without waiting another moment, Tunde turned and hurried back through the palace corridors, his footsteps light and quick. The council was plotting to destroy everything Zola once ruled, but he wouldn't let that happen. Back in the hidden room, Zola sat quietly, her hands resting on her knees as she closed her eyes. She had been locked away for centuries, but her mind was sharp, and her heart burned with the same fire that had once made her a feared ruler. She had always known her enemies would stop at nothing to erase her memory, but hearing Tunde's footsteps approaching brought her a sense of urgency. Tunde burst through the door, his face pale with worry. They're planning to destroy you, Your Majesty. They want to get rid of your crown. Zola's eyes flickered with anger, but she remained calm. They are afraid, as they should be. My return means the end of their reign. But we must be careful. If they realize I am already awake, they will come for us. Tunde nodded, his heart pounding. What should we do? They're meeting now, planning their next move. Zola stood tall, her presence commanding. We will not let them win. I will reclaim my throne, but first, we need allies. We must find those who are loyal to the true ruler of Anzaya. Tunde was filled with both fear and excitement. Zola was not just a forgotten queen, she was a force of nature, and she would stop at nothing to take back what was rightfully hers. The next few days passed in a blur as Tunde and Zola worked in secret, gathering information about the palace's inner workings. Zola had once ruled this land, but after centuries in hiding, she needed to know who in the kingdom could still be trusted. Tunde, with his ability to slip unnoticed through the palace corridors, became Zola's eyes and ears. He listened to the conversations of the guards, the whispers of the servants, and the murmurs in the marketplace. Slowly, he began to piece together a picture of who might be loyal to Queen Zola. One name kept coming up, Adanna, a powerful warrior who had always been loyal to the royal family. Tunde knew that if anyone could help Zola reclaim her throne, it would be Adanna. We need to find her, Tunde told Zola one night as they sat in their hidden room. Everyone says she's the strongest warrior in all of Anzaya. If we can convince her to join us, others will follow. Zola nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. Adanna was a trusted friend of my family. If she is still loyal, she will help us. But finding Adanna would not be easy. She had left the palace long ago, choosing to live in the remote mountains far from the politics of the kingdom. Tunde knew the journey to find her would be dangerous, but it was their only hope.